I don't think it's coincidental at all. I think it's Von Trier saying, and he close-ups on the Jack between Matt Dillon and Uma Thurman countless times during this when they're in the red truck together. It's totally not a coincidence. Who knows what his real name is, but it's, hey, it's as good a name as any. And Jack, it's a red Jack, and it's a blunt force instrument, which is what Matt Damon kind of aspires to be. So
it's Chekhov's Jack.
Yeah.
So I thought this was interesting. So Matt Dillon was talking to him, and he was talking to Von Trier, and he said, it felt to me like the only time that Jack was passive, but then it became clear to me it's all in Jack's head. Uma's character is very real, but when she starts talking, the words we hear, that's his inner thinking. I told Lars, and he gave me a look like, you caught. And that's very interesting, right? So she's being very antagonistic in this scene. And it's the first kill of the movie, right? And so it sets it up. And it's almost like she's asking for it. And I think it gets uglier as the movie progresses. And that's why I don't think this movie is a shock value movie. I think it's a well thought out, layered film. I don't know. So what were you going to say?
No, I think... I don't know if antagonize is the word I would use, but I just think what you said was spot on. The reference to what she's saying is actually Jack's inner thoughts, because it's so absurd, along with the Jack itself as a device, a narrative device and an actual device that he uses to beat her head in. It's just like Uma Thurman is just giving you all the cliches, all the psychology that accompanies serial killer lore. And it's actually almost kind of ridiculously funny the way she goes about. It's just so cavalier. It's like, it takes the whole notion of C. Thomas Howell in The Hitcher, where he's like, oh, my mom never told me to do this. And it just takes it up a notch. It's like, it's if Rutger Hauer came in and started deconstructing this choice he'd made, kind of. So, rest in peace, Rutger Hauer.
We have a Lady Hawk episode coming out. So by the time you listen to this, our Lady Hawk episode will be out.
This will give me a chance to watch it. I've never seen that one.
Oh my goodness. Dude, he's good in it. Richard Donner, geez Louise.
Oh yeah, he was an efficient 80s guy. Yeah.
Just be ready for the synth score. Just be ready for it.
Is it Tangerine Dream or
no? It's Alan Parsons. And I mean, it does not work. But if you just listen to it, you'd be like, I want to go running. So it worked. It's just a very cheeky-esque score. But
gotcha.
Also, like, this thing though, he takes her to the thing. Her jack breaks, and then they fix it. It breaks again, and then he just drives her car across the state line, parks it where people can see it, but no one messes with it. He throws the keys kind of cheekily into a crick, and you never hear from it again. So this first kill is setting you up as if you're a certain line of thinking, you're like, yeah, Jack, yeah. Or you're understanding that this is a Von Trier film and it's going to go somewhere weird.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting all these coincidences, and they continue kind of throughout the incidents as he goes through them. It's like all of this seems way too coincidental, and it almost plays into is that really how it happened, or is he just such an egomaniac? That it's like, some guys got all the luck, kind of, and it's like I'm one of those guys, and I just happen to kill people. So yeah. And
I love that Verge is like, you're full of shit.
Why are the women so stupid in your stories? Which is I love when Von Trier trots that out, because I was like, yeah, he's going to have to address that at some point or another, and I'm glad he actually did.
Random thing for you here. So at the con screening, when Matt Dillon was sitting right next to Von Trier, and at the end of it, Dillon looked at Lars and was like, that was great. And Lars looked at him like, I hate you. And he was like, oh crap, I shouldn't have said that. Like, there was something wrong with the movie because I liked it. Okay, no one will ever understand this. So we watch this movie, and, at the end, they're going... So I don't know if you know this, but... no, you obviously don't know this, but... So I was a lit major in high school, and I didn't decide that until my freshman year. So I was the classic feral child of the 80s, 90s. And when I graduated from high school, I just did sports, so I knew nothing about literature. Like, my favorite class was freshman year of high school, where we read Most Dangerous Game and Shakespeare. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And I never did that again. So when I got to college, I went to a junior college before I went to Florida State, and I had a teacher who really put us through the ringer of reading. And that's the first time I read Dante's Inferno. And I remember I wrote like a 5-page paper, but it was supposed to be a speech. And then I got so nervous, I couldn't stand up in front of the class. So I sat at my desk, and instead of looking at the class, I just read from my paper. But that's the first time I think in my life that I wrote something really in depth about anything, which was Dante's Inferno. And after that, I really became obsessed with the art of Dante's Inferno. So, we have the Dali Museum. When I lived in St. Petersburg, Florida, in Sarasota, there's a Ringling Brothers Museum, and they also had some really cool art there. So I think I became extra invested in this movie because of the whole Dante's Inferno. And the whole red hoodie that Dylan is wearing is obviously a callback to some of the art of, traveling through the river Styx.
Yeah.
And so that's another reason I was super invested in this movie, by the way, is just the whole Dante and the traveling down. I became transfixed in this movie in the last half hour. What did you think about the last half hour of this film?
I had no idea. Something about Von Trier, I think, is most of his stuff is you can't tell what he's going to do aesthetically or narratively from one moment to the next. It's like he gets these ideas for structure, and it's kind of ingenious in this film that he just has these 5 incidents and an epilogue. But that last half hour was like, where can he go with this? And I knew kind of that Verge was kind of this character who was guiding him along this journey, but I wasn't expecting the epilogue to go on for as long as it did.
I thought it was beautiful, dude. I loved it. No, it was actually kind of fascinating to watch, and just how Von Trier is still employing like that Dogma 95 doctrine, kind of, because there's just these random images, scenes cut randomly. Then you have this is that one replication of artwork, the River Styx, Mark, where it's him and Verge on a boat, and it's going in slow motion, and there are all these writhing bodies beneath it. And when they're going down the ladders with all the bodies.
Yeah, that too. It goes normal speed, it goes in slow motion, and then it feels like it's not moving at all. And then he sees that flashback to when he was a kid with the guys who were cutting the size, the fields with the size and the sound that makes. It was very interesting, and it's kind of I thought it was appropriate, I guess you could say. It was fitting that Von Trier went there instead of just that he got metaphysical with it, I guess.
Do you think the ghosts from the Frighteners would have been jealous of those guys and their breathing with his scythe?
I don't know. Maybe. I haven't seen the Frighteners in years, unfortunately.
If I had to pick one director to make a movie entirely in slow motion, it would be Von Trier. Because my first experience with, I guess if you want to look into this, it's called the Phantom camera. And I keep telling my school they should get it, and they're like, Mark, you're stupid. They'll never afford that. It's insane, and we'll never buy that. But just the footage that he captures in slow motion, man, just the melancholia when they're running and that opening footage. I would watch a 2-hour Von Trier movie that's all in slow motion.
Oh yeah. I probably would too. Yeah.
I would watch a 2-hour movie of the Fox saying Chaos Reigns over and over.
I'm sure on YouTube somewhere there's a 10 hours just Chaos Reigns on repeat. Probably someone's probably done that.
Please loop it for us, somebody. And so how about this? Let's take a quick break, and then while we're on this break, you loop that scene for me, and then you send it to both Johnny and myself, and when we come back, we'll talk more The House That Jack Built. Welcome back to Movies, Films, and Flicks, and we just drank some tea with some donut pieces inside of it. How was that, Johnny? That's okay. All right. I was wondering at first if I was a sick person for laughing at that, but then I realized that's what Von Trier wanted.
Yeah.
That's a comedic scene, right?
You know what, Mark? That incident 2 is what we're talking about. People were going crazy with laughter during that scene when I saw it in the theater. And actually, I was probably one of the only ones who was sitting there kind of stoic. But watching it again the other night, I was like, yeah, that is pretty funny. It's so ridiculous.
So his speech to get in. So today, I've been talking about this lately on the pod, but for me, today it took me an hour and 50 minutes to get to work. I got stuck in like a crazy traffic jam. And so what I do is if, I watch the movie, I take all the notes, but if I know I'm recording that day, I'll put the movie on and I'll listen to it. And so I was listening to this movie while stuck in rush hour traffic. And when so in incident 2, he's trying to get into this woman's home. And at first he says he's a cop. And he's like, well, I don't have my badge because I got a promotion and they're inscribing stuff on it. And he's like, well, no, never mind.
What is it, at the silversmith or the tinsmith or something?
The silversmith shop. And they're inscribing new things on it. And then he's like, well, oh, surprise, I'm an insurance guy. And I can get you double your husband's pension because she's a widower. And then a guy drives by, like Hank, and she's like, oh, hi, Hank. And he goes, oh, hey, Hank. And she's like, you know Hank? And he's like, yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, just... And then she goes, oh, well, what can it hurt? I'll let you inside my home. And she lets him inside, and she goes to get tea, and he chokes her. And it's not a successful choke. And so she wakes up, and she's gagging because she can't talk. He puts a pillow under her head, and he wants to give her tea and donut.
Oh, here, let me help you.
Yeah. And then he just chokes her.
Yeah.
And then he puts her in a chair. And then he's OCD. So he keeps going back into the house to check everything to make sure it's clean. And then a cop comes.
Yeah.
And then he tells the cop to go inside. It's just his lies. And you're just laughing. And then he drives home with David Bowie's Fame playing, right? With a face dragging down. And then it rains and all evidence is lost.
The Great Rain. Yeah.
Oh my. And now I gotta say, I haven't brought this up yet. And I highlighted this. But the cinematography from Manuel Alberto Claro. He also did Melancholia, which he's my hero. He did Nymphomaniac and he did Top 5, the Chris Rock movie. Which makes sense because he's basically the handheld king, I think.
Yeah.
And Top 5 is very before sunrise, before sunset, a lot of walking and talking. Okay. I love Claro's cinematography. I love the handheld camera in this. And Matt Dillon said that it was very freeing for him to have the camera being handheld. What did you think about the cinematography in this movie?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. And, to your point about the other stuff he's worked on, like Melancholia is a very beautiful movie as well. I mean, in this, he captures really the quote unquote art of the piece with House That Jack Built. And I agree with your point about what Matt Dillon said about the camera or the handheld being very freeing. You can really tell it in the way the characters interact, the way they move, and just, it gives it kind of uncomfortable intimacy, which I think is kind of actually helps a story like this. In some ways there are moments that are a bit Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer-y.
I was just about to say that. That's awesome.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So I think it really helps, Von Trier make his points, but it also helps sort of underline those darkly comedic or more disturbing moments. Actually, there's a moment in Incident 4, I think, was Simple.
Oh, she's so good, Riley Keough.
Oh my God, it takes real talent to play stupid like she plays stupid in this movie.
Did you know that Matt Dillon had an incredibly hard time shooting that scene with her because he said that she is so good at playing scared. And he said that during that scene, he could barely do it because she was so good, which is awesome, right? Like that's kind of a cool fact.
That's impressive because she does give off that it's almost like there's this cluelessness that then gives way to like, oh my God, like what, I'm in a room with a madman, basically. And then what's even worse is that, oh, well, you can scream all you want to, but you're in this Skid Row shithole and nobody's going to do anything. And who knows whether that's just his perception or what, or if this is how he's perceiving this Simple character, like he was perceiving the hitchhiker and all these other women, like they're so stupid,
And people have made parallels to Jeffrey Dahmer, where one of his victims ran out to the police, but he was wasted because he was drugged, and they just gave him back to Jeffrey Dahmer. So some people have made parallels to that scene, with the serial killing as well. And she was also chugging vodka and eating pretzels the whole time, so she was pretty crunked, I guess, or drunk.
Well, yeah, the cop that she runs to even mentions that, have you been drinking, ma'am? And then it turns into that thing where, oh, well, here comes Jack, and he's like saying, oh yeah, I am a killer, and of course the cop's not gonna believe that. It goes kind of back to the second incident where, there's all this good dumb luck that he has, and he seems to be sort of taking advantage of this world where nobody, kind of, he puts a fine point on it, nobody cares, scream scream all you want, nobody cares. And that's the apathetic hellhole that we live in. So
what do you think that if this happens, what do you think the police is going to think when he finds what Matt Dillon put underneath his windshield wiper?
Oh, I don't mean to laugh, but the
that was insane. Yeah, that was bonkers.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't. Oh, man,
it's weird. So this movie has some really hellish visions, but since it feels like a Tarantino meets Wes Anderson movie at times, it doesn't it doesn't affect you the way that like a Melancholia or a Dancer in the